Welcome to the Higher Energy Superpower. This is episode 10 of the Turbo Duo Cast. I am your host, Salvatore Mata, and to my left, as always, my hetero life mate, Trenton E. Wright III.
Esquire in the building.
You're not an Esquire.
And
There's no such thing. We established this about 5 podcasts ago.
Technical department of the podcast.
Yeah. Lots of technical difficulties we're having here, as you can see by the boner that Trenton is talking to over there.
Talking into a spoon. It's like one of those electrical conductor kits you get when you're like 8, and you gotta like put the 2 wires together with the potato. That's how we're powering this
I have
mic.
no idea what you're talking about right now.
You know damn right. When you would use the power of electricity through a potato to like turn on a light.
I know what you mean, but I never owned one, so I don't.
Did it in school, you fruit.
We did like the motors. We had like the wire motors that were stuck into like the 2 ends, whatever. I don't really care.
Made vibrators?
Yeah. That's how you got your master in
your masturbator.
You had to make a dildo that actually worked. Man.
Time to bang.
If Mr. Lawrence from my sixth grade science class only knew.
Mr. Lawrence.
Hey, he's the Reverend Roy. Okay.
There's only one Reverend, and that's Rev Run.
I don't even know who that is.
Run DMC?
I don't know who they are.
Never heard of them.
Oh.
All lies.
So there's something fun and something that I didn't even realize until yesterday that we're up upon, and that is...
that we're all up in.
It's just about the 1-year anniversary of our channel.
Oh, 1 year!
Yeah, I mean, it's... Our first video, kind of, like, where we were really on camera, we did one video of, like, the fighting games, but then the Retro World Expo was our first sort of,
Oh, yeah, that was actually
bigger
technically
deal.
this weekend last year.
Yeah. And that's coming up, well, by the time you guys hear this, it's probably already gone. But
it's probably been 3 months since it happened.
As we're recording, it's coming up in a couple weeks.
We don't want to date ourselves.
No, we
physically and mentally and metaphorically.
Why don't we just do a show note quickly, and then we will get into some modern retro. But
show notes
from, I believe it was the last podcast, we were talking about basketball games. And you mentioned a Konami game that looked like Run and Gun
for the
basketball.
Super Nintendo.
And that's
Give and Go?
NBA Give and Go.
I don't know why I couldn't remember it.
You just
then.
remembered it now.
Yeah. Because we played it. Like, I picked it up recently. Or not recently, but...
Yeah.
It's a hot jam, as they would say.
Yeah. And one of our friends on Instagram actually lives in my town. Beat you in a No Mercy tournament, I guess, for the championship a couple of years ago.
We don't like to talk about things that happened in the past.
You know who you are. Enlightened us on Instagram that the stone statue in Mario 3 is actually from the Tanuki suit, which...
Tanuki!
Damn it, how did we not know that? It just goes to show you how often we got the Tanuki suit in Mario 3 and probably how long it's been.
He's the best character in Mario Kart 8.
The Tanuki Mario?
Tanuki!
Speaking of which,
he does that.
Speaking of which, I love the Excite Bike stage. Going back, throwback to last podcast. I think that's pretty much it. I wanted to talk about something else. I'm going to talk about it. So I mentioned a game that was an analog to Excite Bike on the Master System, and that's called Enduro Racer,
which would also be pronounced an anal OG.
Like analog? Analog? Is that what you meant?
Yeah. You could pronounce it as anal OG.
What does that have to do with Enduro Racer?
An analog.
Oh, right. An analog. Man, we are going off the deep end
slow.
Early. Gotta get myself together here. Be like the nightly news with Dan Rather.
You gotta crack that ass over there, that's why.
Oh!
Oh! How'd this get here?
The monkey in the room. The elephant in the room. The new unofficial, because they haven't given us the the permission to use it. The unofficial, because it's just an amazing beer. I posted about this on Instagram.
The officially unofficial official.
beer of the Turbo Duo cast is Dogs vs. Shinobi, which is a collaboration between the Pipeworks Brewing Company and Beard Brewing Company, actually here in Connecticut. And just a very juicy beer.
Juicy? Is it citrusy?
It's got a little citrus, I would say, because of the hop, but it's got a guava puree that's added to it. It is just delightful, and they call their ninjas shinobis, so I think that was only appropriate for us to add them.
No trademark infringement.
No, this is unofficial. This is just on us. We just love their beer, and it all made sense. It's probably my favorite beer right now, ironically, considering that let's get a good pour going here. Let's see if I don't mess this up. Oh, can you hear that?
I can hear it.
Wow.
It's a solid pour.
It almost sounds like somebody's pissing.
Hey, I mean, you probably couldn't tell the difference, right?
Man, is that a commercial worthy right there? Can you check out the effervescence on that? That's beautiful. Should I give it a sip? Should I let it sit?
Let's do it. He's gonna do a sip. A tight sip, as they would say. That's good pod.
We don't want to let the people listening miss out on this. If you can't see it, check it out on YouTube, guys. Dogs vs. Shinobi. If you're in the Connecticut area, maybe even in the Chicago area, because I think that's where Pipeworks is.
If you're in the cut.
They might have it out there, but just a delicious brew if you guys are into microbreweries and independent breweries and IPAs and New England style ales. Let's get into our modern retro moment, which we call our "It's Still Real to Me, Damn It" moment.
It's still real to me, damn it!
So, something's happening, or something happened a couple days ago as we record this podcast, and I put something up. I put something up on Instagram about it, and that was the 20th anniversary of the Dreamcast.
Man, I miss my Uncle Charles, y'all.
I almost want to pour one out, like I did. I posted about it.
Poured them out all week.
It was an exciting time. It was quickly a sad time. And actually,
it was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
So I mentioned this, and I think it was last podcast, and we had to put a note up. I don't know if we ended up doing it, but
no.
I mentioned how I said that the PS2 came out in March of 2001, and I was texting with you, and I said I had that wrong. It was October of 2000. The reason why I said March of 2001 was because, do you know why?
Because that's when the PlayStation 2 came out?
Because that's when Dreamcast, Sega announced that they were stopping producing hardware.
It's almost, they were like the WCW of video games, because WCW went out in 2001 too.
That's true. Kind of at the same time. They should have done a cross promotion with each other.
Who will die first? The Dreamcast versus WCW.
But I loved the Dreamcast so much, and I loved Sega that when it died, kind of like officially,
you're like, I had to bury my best friend.
But it was, to me, that was the start of the PS2, and then that spring I went with our good friend Pat Musin.
Oh yes.
I went to go visit. I think it was that spring. I believe it was that spring. We went to go see. Sometime after that, we went to go see his brother down in Wake Forest, and the guys in the dorm room were playing Grand Theft Auto 3.
And that's when you knew it was a wrap.
And that's when I said, "Okay,
this is what we're doing.
We're okay to move forward." So I still ended up getting like Shenmue 2, from the PAL version, and still playing my Dreamcast. But that was after that is kind of when I let it die. But I was in denial for a little while. I was like, checking in with the Babbage's GameStop guys, and I was like, "Did you guys sell any more Dreamcasts?
Nope.
Is there a chance they might come back?" But ironically, the Dreamcast is one of those consoles that gets more support than a lot of others when it comes to new games. There's a lot of new production that hits the Dreamcast.
It's like the
indie style games and homebrews.
The Jaguar community.
Where did you learn to fly?
For some reason, I still don't understand it. Why people make new games for the Jaguar.
The Jaguar sucks.
Yeah, but you know that there's
the Jaguar sucks. The Jaguar fucking sucks. No, the Jaguar fucking sucks.
No, I know, but there's people
there's two games that anybody wants to play on the Jaguar: Alien vs. Predator and Tempest 2000. Yeah. Tempest 2000 is on PS1 and on Saturn. I mean, it's essentially the same game. The Jaguar version's a little bit better. Like, nobody cares.
That's not the point. I'm just saying I don't understand why there are companies that make like Jaguar games still.
Well, we've got a community of 5,000 people, so let's produce 10,000 cartridges. The Jaguar fucking sucks.
Anyway.
Sorry, you guys. If you guys love the Jaguar, I just think when you look at the Jaguar,
Nobody loves the Jaguar.
when you look at the Jaguar and you compare it to its contemporary, which is the 3DO, the 3DO blows it out of the water.
Just do the math, bro.
I'm sorry, but the 3DO did more for pushing forward gaming than Atari ever did after the 2600.
Do the math.
No, I'm not going to do the math.
Do the math.
The 3DO was 32-bit. The Jaguar was 64-bit. What are you talking about?
Case closed.
Remember that commercial with the teacher on the chalkboard?
Yes, that's why I'm doing it.
Can you see this elephant behind this dot?
Then you can do the math.
You can do the math. The Jaguar fucking sucks. Anyways, the Dreamcast. So I can remember just one more story. I can remember being in our mall, the local mall that we have.
Eastbrook Mall, shopping fun begins at the Eastbrook Mall.
No, not that mall. There's a mall in Manchester, Connecticut. It's called the Buckland Hills Mall, or it was until
They don't have a jingle though.
Until they changed it to some foofy name, the Shops at Buckland Hills, whatever, something yuppie. There was a GameStop that had just moved upstairs, and then there was an electronics boutique that was downstairs. And
Yep, I remember that.
And I can remember now they both had a Dreamcast kiosk right outside, like they would put it right outside the front gate.
Yep.
But I can remember the first time I saw Sonic Adventure, and it was down at this electronics boutique. And usually when you go to a kiosk that's been put out, it's like you and maybe there's like this, this one like 7-year-old that's like playing, and you're just you'd look at him, you'd be like, dude, you are not doing this the right way. Like, you suck. Can you please get out of the way? I want to try the game. I know what I'm doing. I'm 12.
Get a wolf.
That would always be the case. You'd have like this little kid, and then you'd be sitting waiting like, okay, if my mom comes out of that store in the next 2 minutes and you're still playing this game, I'm not going to get an opportunity. So push aside, kid. But the specific time, and it must have been right when Sonic Adventure maybe came out in Japan. They had just maybe had gotten it over at the electronics boutique, but there was a squad. And
Squale!
I mean, think about how small that kiosk was, if you can pull up a picture of it, like the Dreamcast kiosk. And there was literally like 25 to 30 people around this kiosk, like trying to like put their heads above each other to see the screen. And it was that level with the orca that was destroying the bridge, like the not the bridge, the what do you call it when you go out on a the pier.
Yeah, the dock.
The dock.
Yeah.
Or the pier or whatever. And he's destroying the rocks and all that, and the pier is like bouncing up and down. Sonic's coming towards the screen. It was something surreal. I mean, it was something you'd never even imagine could be possible before.
Yeah, it was like the swimming in Mario 64.
Anything in Mario 64. But those moments where it was like, not only was it something you had never experienced before, you just thought was like magic, but you were experiencing it with like 25, like 24 other gamers, and it just felt like I had never been to a convention at that point, but it almost felt like just this atmosphere, this hype, this palpability. Everybody was just clamoring for it. It was such an exciting time to be around. This is very early in internet technology. People didn't always have the ability to go online and check stuff out. It wasn't at your fingertips. So when you saw it, it was like in the flesh. It was like, holy cow, I can't believe this is here. It's such a big deal. And it was just awesome. That moment was like it for me. I'm like, I got to have this system. I got to see it. And that's when I decided I need to start saving for this thing as soon as possible. And then in January of 1999 is when I started working for my dad. And I said, I'm every month I'm going to go and put money down and put it towards this system. And eventually I go on Instagram and see the story. But I was able to get it, and it was pretty awesome. Even though I had to wait to get it, I was trying to go on launch day, and I had a retreat that I had to go to.
Blew it.
So anyways, that's a little bit that I wanted to say about Dreamcast. I'm like huffing and puffing. I gotta calm down. What do you say we get into what do you say we get into these games, Trent?
Let's get in them.
I'm just gonna take a sip here. Hold on.
As I'll sip my champagne. Oh yeah, that's good podcasting.
the gulping.
Yeah.
So if you've seen by the title of this, we're going to be talking about the best of the rest, everybody. We're going to be talking about the fighting games that aren't Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter 2.
Or Last Battle.
Why is it that when we're getting some kind of momentum, you come in and say something fucking stupid like that? Last Battle is not a one-on-one fighting game.
We all talk about that when we discuss the fighting games.
But that's like me saying, well, it's not Kung Fu. Sometimes I gotta whip him and
Carry on.
Everybody. Last Battle. There were like cabbages coming down, like rain, but it looked like cabbages. They're throwing cabbages.
Swarms. They're all gonna be coming at you.
Don't play Last Battle, everybody. So, we really wanted to dedicate an episode to fighting games that were popular in their time, but nothing was going to meet the competition that was Mortal Kombat versus Street Fighter 2. Which, in hindsight, why was that such a competition? They were two completely different games, even though they were one-on-one.
Yeah, but that's just like, the battle of Nintendo and Sega, or the SNES and the Genesis and any other game, because they're just
that makes
they're
sense.
the most popular ones.
Yeah,
and they were different, and that's why this is why this one's better. This is why Street Fighter's better.
Yeah.
This is why Mortal Kombat's better.
I don't want to make this a Street Fighter 2 versus Mortal Kombat episode, but
everybody's done that.
No, I know. So we thought it'd be fun to kind of go into some of the other games that were still really good, that or
allegedly really good.
Yeah, were reviewed well in their time, or were had loyal followings, and were somewhat successful, and maybe haven't been talked about quite a bit. Now, the first one that we're going to talk about is a game that is still held in high regard. Has had some remakes and revisions done. Xbox One had one at launch, I believe, which was actually really successful. There was a big community for that, and that's Killer Instinct. Ultra Combo! So Killer Instinct was developed by Rare. So this is the company that developed some of the classic 64 titles like GoldenEye, Banjo-Kazooie,
Donkey Kong,
Jet Force Gemini, Donkey Kong. So they've got quite a pedigree. They were the ones who produced Donkey Kong Country as well. So they developed the game. Nintendo published it. And it's hard to talk about the Super Nintendo version of Killer Instinct without talking about the arcade version, because
that's what it's based on.
So much of that game comes from the arcade, and the arcade has a pretty rich story as well, and how that was developed. So the arcade game came out October 28th, 1994, and the Super Nintendo version came out August 30th, 1995. So less than a year after the arcade version was produced, they actually created a Super Nintendo version, and the Super Nintendo version came packed in with a soundtrack CD.
Which I believe was the first game to do that.
I didn't get any information that said that, but I'll believe you.
I mean,
that could be. I mean,
what game was coming with a CD soundtrack?
Nothing that I can think of offhand.
At least if it wasn't, then it was the first well-known game to have a CD included in 1995 for a cartridge-based game.
Yeah.
I mean, the music was pumping.
If you listen to the beginning of this episode, that first title that title track for Killer Instinct is, if that doesn't get you in the mood, I don't know what does.
The mood for what? Anything?
As you would say, pause. Killer Instinct. How many copies do you think that Killer Instinct sold on the Super Nintendo, Trent?
I would guess probably. Well, it wasn't ever one. It wasn't another. Was it Player's Choice or one of those?
Yes, I believe so.
Oh, so over 1 million.
Over 1 million.
It's Platinum Plus.
Let's put it this way: if it wasn't a Player's Choice, it would have been.
I don't know, 1.6.
If you doubled it, you'd be right. 3.2 million copies of Killer Instinct were sold.
Damn, I didn't realize it was that big.
And 3.2 million copies were sold in late 1995.
That's when the PlayStation was out already.
Just about to come out. September is when it came out, and Saturn was already out. So the next generation had already started. But as we know about Nintendo, they like to lengthen their consoles.
They're like, we don't give a fuck.
Back in the day, they did. I mean, the Nintendo lasted until 1994.
Yeah, we got Alfred Chicken.
I was thinking Kirby. Kirby that was the only Kirby game that I actually ever played that I enjoyed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was that one. The music was by Robin Beanland.
Ah, good old Robin Beanland.
So Robin, his other credits were mostly Rare games. He did Donkey Kong Country, Killer Instinct 2 as well, GoldenEye, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Jet Force Gemini. So he was working with Rare pretty much on all their games, and he actually still, up to this day, was working with Rare. He actually did the soundtrack for Sea of Thieves, which was released on Xbox One. That was the multiplayer game. It was a pirate looting game where you're in a boat and it has almost like a Monkey Island look.
Oh yeah,
in a way.
One of those older style looking games.
Kind of, yeah. That first title track is called The Instinct, and he produced that, and that's one of, when I think about retro music, that's probably up there in the upper echelon of retro music. At least that title track is. And the story of Killer Instinct, I think, is kind of fascinating, and how it came to be, and really in terms of how Rare and Nintendo came together on the technology that they were using. So Rare had purchased a Silicon Graphics workstation in 1993, and Silicon Graphics was a very high-powered PC that could do 3D rendering. It could do CGI graphics and render them from a 3D model into a two-dimensional character. Just a very high-powered computer that they could use to actually create video games, turn everything into two-dimensional models, and then actually release it on a 16-bit platform. The first game that they ever did that with was Donkey Kong Country. And what's a bigger hitter on the Super Nintendo or in the 16-bit generation than Donkey Kong Country?
Not much.
Name me 5 games that are bigger than Donkey Kong Country.
You mean more popular?
It's just a question.
I don't want an answer.
It's just to get you to think about it.
I know.
So they showed a demo of a two-dimensional pre-rendered boxing game to Nintendo, and once Nintendo saw how big Donkey Kong was going to be, they immediately funded this project to produce this fighting game. Now, originally it was a boxing game, and one of the characters, TJ something, I think his name's TJ. He's like a boxer.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that's
and
his name.
Boxing.
TJ.
Yeah, there's a boxing stage in it too.
Yeah. So he basically came from that demo. That was his character model. Kevin Bayliss was the graphic designer, and he shared some of his character models. And his idea for this fighting game at Nintendo immediately was like, we're gonna support this thing. And everything really lined up for Nintendo, for Rare, for Silicon Graphics or SGI, because Nintendo and Rare sort of independently came to the realization that the next technology that they both were going to use was Silicon Graphics, because Nintendo ended up using that technology to produce their next console, the Nintendo 64.
Right.
Now, have you heard the story of how Nintendo got the connection to SGI?
No.
So, SGI, the guy who started SGI, his name is Jim Clark, and he went to a fella named Tom Kalinske, who worked for Sega of America. And
I know him.
And he said, we've got this amazing technology. I really think it could work well for you guys for your next system. What do you think we take this to Sega of Japan and see what they think, and maybe we can work together on a console? So Tom Kalinske says, I think this is great. I would love to use this as our next technology. They go to Japan. They show it to the board of Japan. Japan strikes it down. They don't want to have anything to do with it. They think that for whatever reason, the development of a console like this is either going to be too expensive or it's going to have bandwidth issues that are not going to be able to produce what they want to produce for their next console. Either that or arrogance. For whatever reason, they put the kibosh on it. So what does Tom say to Jim? You know, even though Sega of Japan didn't want to have anything to do with this, I think there's somebody that might.
I know someone who.
You should go talk to Nintendo. Tom Kalinske told Jim Clark
Tommy K.
to talk to Nintendo, and the rest is history. Now, was Nintendo crazy successful with the 64? Not particularly, but in America, they were. Marginally, but they were.
Yeah.
You know, America loves the Nintendo 64. Anytime you go out and
Damn right.
anytime you're at a game show, anytime you're at a game store, 64 is one of the hottest consoles that people want. And up until recently, those things were flying off the shelves way more than PlayStation 1s were.
Well,
PlayStation 1's,
come on, man.
PlayStation 1's propped up a little bit. But through all of that, where you have like Saturn and PlayStation at that same generation, where a lot of these games are hello?
Ding dong.
A lot of these games are sort of propping up in value to crazy amounts. The 64 games are staying pretty reasonable. The games people want are staying pretty reasonable, and that's because they sold so many copies that there's a good amount of them out there.
Yeah.
You know, the only reason that they're propped up, like people think that Snowboard Kids 2 is like an extremely rare game, and I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and it's really not, who works in the industry, and he's like, it's not, but you know, it gets propped up because of eBay and all these other places that want to prop it up, you know, and
yeah, you don't see it though ever.
Maybe somebody's bought up all the stock of it, and they're slowly releasing it.
We go to Retro World Expo. There was one copy of it in the whole expo.
They're hiding
it. You know.
But my point is
there wasn't even a copy of Snowboard Kids 1.
Nobody's trying to play Snowboard Kids.
Well, they should be. It's great.
Everybody wants to play Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, GoldenEye. Right?
No one wants to play Banjo-Kazooie.
Mario Kart.
Yeah, but if
Super Smash Brothers.
If they knew about Snowboard Kids, they'd want to play it.
When was the last time you played Snowboard Kids, Trent?
I mean, I don't play my 64.
Okay, so shut up. But I just think it's kind of fascinating how Rare bought this workstation in '93, and then Nintendo, either in that year or the year after, learns about SGI and starts on this deal with Jim Clark. And honestly, I almost feel like the fact that Rare started using this technology was part of the reason why Nintendo said yes to it, because they trusted Rare as one of their closest allies. Rare was able to be on the Dream Team for the 64. They were one of the closest advisors in terms of something that was more Western than Japan. And who knows if their involvement and the fascination that they had with SGI was one of the reasons why Nintendo said yes. But it all lined up.
Right.
It all worked out. And it's funny because going back to the arcade version of Killer Instinct, if you're looking at the attract screen of Killer Instinct in the arcades, it says the announcer, that amazing announcer from the Killer Instinct games. He says, "Own it 1995 for the Ultra 64 from Nintendo."
Oh, really? We're still,
yes.
Still calling it that?
Well, the game came out in 1994.
Yeah.
And so by I think in early 1996, we were still calling it the Ultra 64. I think it was only like 6 months or 8 months before the system came out that we started calling it the Nintendo 64. How awesome would it have been if it was called the Ultra 64? I thought that was a great name for it. Ultra 64. Does that scream more 90s? They could have called it the Radical 64.
The Extreme 64.
The Extreme 64.
The Ultra Extreme 64.
Yeah, I was a little bit like, damn, why did they change it to Ultra?
Yeah, I remember seeing it in like EGM and Game
That
Players.
logo too was great.
Yeah,
it was the Ultra
yeah.
with the 64 in the middle with like the ring, and it just looked like it was like glowing.
Yep.
That was great.
Code name.
This was the first arcade game that Nintendo produced since the Versus series. Remember we talked about the Versus
Yeah, Excite Bike.
Excite Bike series. I'm guessing they're not including the Play Choice 10, but those were actually Nintendo games.
Yeah.
But, so Midway produced the arcade units themselves, so it was like a partnership between Midway and Nintendo, and Midway ended up becoming
with the heavy hitter.
part of that dream team for Nintendo 64, producing games for it, and they did all the cruising games.
But we don't like to talk about off road though.
Off road?
Yeah.
What does it have to do with cruising?
Well, no, it's Midway.
Did Midway do off road?
Yeah.
Why do I think that was Trade West? Maybe they published it on NES.
Pretty sure they did.
Okay. Well, we might be really wrong about that, everybody.
Because I remember you said you bought it and you were like, oh, it's off road, and then you put it. Oh no, was that the Super Nintendo one? You bought the wrong off road.
Yeah, it was like the Baja version.
Baja Blast Mountain Dew version.
Was that Midway?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But I definitely the one on 64. I'm like 95% positive that was Midway. Because it played just like cruising.
We don't fact check here on the Turbo Duo.
Until after.
But please fact check. Please check that. The arcade version of Killer Instinct looks amazing. It had scaling like a lot of the Neo Geo fighters, like Samurai Showdown.
In and out, yeah. In and
Ahead
out,
of
up and down.
That cinematic graphics look, those CG sort of almost digitized, but not digitized look.
Like Mortal Kombat, but
using
to the next level.
But using character models.
Yeah, not like actual
made on
people.
a computer. That look is just, it's iconic, but it's also still slick. If you look at those models, if you watch any gameplay footage of that arcade game, it just everything works really well together. The scaling.
I was gonna say, did you ever? I don't remember the arcade game at all. I think that maybe was like.
I never. I mean, I may have seen it, but I don't remember seeing the arcade unit out.
Yeah.
I can.
Weird.
I don't know if I saw one when I was doing the research for the podcast, but
No,
I have this image in my head that it's like a big arcade unit.
Have you ever played the arcade one?
No.
No, I don't think I have either.
But Killer Instinct Gold came out in the 64, and that was pretty much Killer Instinct 2 from the arcades. Yeah. Even though it was misleading that they said that it was the preview of the Ultra 64, because a lot of the components in that arcade unit were not what ended up being in the Nintendo 64. It was actually more powerful than what the Nintendo 64 would have been able to handle.
Didn't the arcade version have like a hard drive in it or something?
It did. It was one of the first games to have a hard drive. Probably to handle all of the animations and all of the character models and how much went into that. The animation of those characters probably took up a lot of memory.
Yeah.
The game is a mix of real world characters and then sort of fantasy characters.
Cinder.
So in that way, it kind of takes a play off of Mortal Kombat. The cool thing about Killer Instinct is that it sort of takes different aspects of different fighting games and kind of mixes them, but then it makes it its own.
Yeah.
So the buttons, the 6 buttons, are really kind of like Street Fighter 2, where you have a low, a middle, and a high, or in terms of a weak, a middle, and a strong punch, and then a weak, middle, and strong kick. And then there's the combos that you can make from that are down to forward and punch, or hold back for 2 seconds and push forward, almost like you were controlling Guile.
And then you go back, down, down, punch, weak kick, punch, punch, back, forward, down, down, kick, punch, weak punch, high punch, ultra. So the thing about Killer Instinct that makes it its own is that it's all about combos and it's the ridiculousness factor. Right it is.
It almost takes a cue from games like NBA Jam. I hate to say that, but it's
NBA Jam.
Yeah, just in the WoW wild factor.
Oh, like the over the top. Okay.
Combos.
I was like, what does combos have to do with NBA Jam?
But there's like 20, 30 hit combos that are just like If you watch footage of it, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. Like when you watch the animation, it's like
Right. And the reason why I say it's like NBA Jam is you almost get more credit for the early shots. The later ones, they don't give you a whole lot of damage, so it's more for that thrill factor.
That wow factor.
You know, you get 2 hits off, and it takes up a good portion of the power bar. But if you keep hitting him, it's like less and less and less and less and less and less and less until it's almost like just for show. So
You gotta memorize the shit out of those things.
I wouldn't know. I've never played it before. That's going to be your department. It also has certain stages are rings and certain stages are just 2-dimensional front, side to side, and there's no end. It's just you back up to the end.
Get kicked off the side.
So it almost has a Virtua Fighter type of arena atmosphere in certain stages where you can knock people off.
Yeah, there's one where you're on the building.
The
one
building
like you're in the sky.
I don't remember that one.
I think so. Pretty sure.
I remember the building.
Yeah.
And they get there's a fatality and it knocks, or they call them
I think in the Super Nintendo one, you just it just like shows you just fall. You just kind of like bounce off the ground.
No, well, you hit a car. You like smash into a car,
and you just kind of fall. Yeah.
Yeah, they're awesomes and supremes. I think depending on how you kill them, it's either an awesome victory or a supreme victory. All right. Like I said, you seem to be rewarded more for early combos, less for later hits. It is a very, very combo-happy game. Very smooth gameplay. That's the thing about Killer Instinct, whether it's on the arcade or whether it's on the Super Nintendo. The thing that translated in that game was the gameplay. Smooth gameplay.
That's all you need in a fighting game, man.
I took a look at some of the Usenet posts, and the general consensus of this game was, when it got translated, was the graphics are not great.
Well, if you're comparing them, for the Super Nintendo,
right,
they're great.
Right, but even when I looked at the footage, after I watched the arcade version first.
Well.
And then I turned on the Super Nintendo, and I almost couldn't believe my eyes. I said, wait a minute, this is the downgrade? And I don't know if it was the character that I was watching. I was watching Glacier.
Yeah. Not Cinder, the opposite.
The opposite, yeah. But Glacier looked...
Not the wrestler either.
Glacier did not look favorable, let's just put it that way. But the gameplay translated, and the voice work translated. So you had the announcer, which I think...
Pack it all into that cart.
That announcer is so important to that experience because it's part of... It's almost like if you played NBA Jam without the guy saying boom shakalaka and he's on fire...
Yeah, you could say this. You could say the same about like Mortal Kombat. With the toasty and the finish him and all that. That kind of puts it over the top. There wasn't like Street Fighter didn't really have like the voices really.
No, just perfect.
Yeah,
but the announcer is almost part of that experience and makes it as fun as it is because it's a satisfaction of when you pull off a combo. That you're going to get that verbal cue.
If you break the combo.
Right, and that's the combo breaker. Right. But it just makes that franchise stand out to something different than a Street Fighter 2 or a Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
I thought you had another comment. Nintendo wasn't always set on the 32 meg cart. They weren't sure if they wanted to do that, and if they didn't, they were going to have to... There was rumors that they were going to have to cut Cinder and Glacier.
Oh, Cinder was my favorite.
And they were going to have to cut the announcers like in a major way. And that would have not been good.
No.
That would have really kind of damaged that game. I'm sure it would have sold well still, but I don't know if we would be talking about this game the way people remember it if that was the case. If they went with a 16 meg or 24 meg cart versus a 32 meg cart. A good comparison of that is Virtua Fighter 2 on the Sega Genesis. Virtua Fighter 2 on the Sega Genesis is a 32 meg cart. It has not all of the moves, but has a lot of the moves from Virtua Fighter 2. It's got basically the same kind of graphics where they took everything that was 3D, turned it into a 2D model, so to speak.
It's all about the megs.
And that game plays very, very well. It plays just like Virtua Fighter 2 on the Saturn or from the arcade.
Yeah,
they really
it's just a forgotten game but
it's so good.
I know, just people see what it looked like and they're like, "Nah, I'm gonna pass." because it doesn't look like Virtua. I mean, it
Right.
doesn't look like Virtua
Right.
Fighter.
But if you guys get an opportunity to play Virtua Fighter 2, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised on the Genesis version. It's actually better than people think.
I don't think it's that much either.
I can't imagine that it would be.
Yeah.
I can't-
Surprisingly, you think
No.
because that was like one of the
It was a later release. Yeah. But a great game nonetheless. Game Fan gave it a 96, so they loved it.
damn.
EGM gave it a 7, a 7.5, an 8, and an 8.5, so it averaged out to a 7.75. Still not bad.
Yeah.
Play more 7s. GamePro gave it a 4 out of 5.
Yeah. Well,
So you're talking a game that,
GamePro.
if you average all that together, you're probably looking at a game in the 8s.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a bad score. I mean, based off of what I've heard from this game and what I've seen, let's hope that this isn't an Excitebike 64 scenario
I hope.
where we're excited about the game and then we're totally,
I hope not.
we're totally in awe at how horrible it controls.
They're like,
But,
what the fuck?
yeah. So, just a very iconic, historically important game, I think. And Nintendo really trying to do right by their fans and putting this out there because they didn't have to do this. The 64 was coming up. I think one of the reasons why they did do it is because they wanted to stay relevant and competitive and give their fans something that they could enjoy. And when you look at these old Usenet posts, people were just excited as ever to play this game. People were clamoring for this.
I wish I could have remembered that excitement. I don't remember. I don't remember anybody talking about it really. I just remember seeing it. I wish.
Well, you gotta imagine if there are people in 1995 that are posting on message boards about the game, they got to be pretty hardcore.
That is like the dawn of the internet.
I was actually seeing people posting saying they were looking for moves lists for the arcade version. Like,
oh, really?
Like, does anybody have a move list for the arcade version so I can?
I'll send you a self-mailing envelope and you can send it back to me.
No, they just asked people to post them
I know.
online, but that was how serious a lot of these people
Pressing one
were.
letter at a time.
Yeah, but I just think that even today, I think Killer Instinct gets overshadowed by Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter 2, and those franchises have come back to do some really great things. You look at Mortal Kombat 11 and 10 and 9.
Mortal Kombat came back hard.
Yeah. They I would say that's probably
But I mean,
the number one fighting game at this point. I mean,
Prob-
Street Fighter 5 is always going to be.
yeah, but
It's always going to have its fans.
yeah. It's yeah. I think Mortal
Don't
Kombat.
talk about Smash because that's a whole different.
No, I wasn't
thing.
going to say Smash. I was just going to say, which is made by the same group as Injustice, is another big one.
Right.
But I
Right.
think Mortal Kombat still. I mean, just because it's been around so long, it's pretty. Is
it Neversoft?
It stayed relevant. I mean, they've been cranking out Mortal Kombat.
Absolutely. No, there's a huge community for Mortal Kombat.
They went down a little bit. They didn't go as like extreme with like Marvel. I think they did a Marvel versus DC or something like that, and they kind of like tamed it down. It was only like a teen rating, and they
Injustice?
took out. No, Mortal Kombat. They did like a Mortal Kombat versus. Someone's gonna know it. I don't know what it is.
Okay, I got you.
And the ones before that, they were kind of like they only did like a teen rating. They didn't go as much as blood and gut stuff, and then they came back, and then it's like boom. That's what people want with Mortal Kombat.
I think last year, or the year before, I was watching a montage of some of the fatalities for the new games.
Oh yeah,
and they're pretty brutal.
like the Johnny Cage selfie one.
Oh yeah, with like the dead person behind him.
Yeah,
but I just think like the visceral, carnal. Like you can see inside of their body as it's like,
and it's
getting demolished and decomposed.
And it's like a serious fighting game now too. Before it was just kind of like a blood and guts, let me kill you kind of game, but now it's like it's serious.
Yeah. I always come down on. I'm more of a Street Fighter guy, but it's funny because when we play, I pretty much destroy you in Street Fighter, but then I don't think I've ever beat you in Mortal Kombat.
Probably not.
I don't know why. I don't know what it is about those two franchises that makes them so different.
Because back then I was Mortal Kombat. I was more Mortal Kombat than Street Fighter. But I actually I like Street Fighter. Like it's almost like neck and neck now.
Really?
Yeah.
You've played Street Fighter recently?
Yeah. I have the one
at Barcade?
No. Well, I have it I have it downloaded the Street Fighter on the Wii U, whatever one that is.
Oh, this one right here.
Like the Street Fighter 2, whatever version it is. Oh, then on the one on the Switch too, I played
Turbo one.
the Street Fighter collection.
Yeah, that's the one that we got for the little guy. He likes that one.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
He likes it because he can just put up a dummy opponent and just beat the shit out of him. So
I feel like I don't know. Going back to Killer
Yeah,
Instinct,
go ahead.
Did you? I don't know if it. I should have looked this up. I feel like there was a version that came with a strategy guide. Or I might have been thinking of a different game, but I feel like there was like a big box version of it that came with it. Or
you mean like Earthbound?
Yeah, maybe I'm getting confused with that because I don't know. I was just thinking.
I don't remember any other game besides Earthbound that came in that big box.
Maybe I'm just getting it confused because it had the soundtrack one.
Yeah, Killer Cuts
Yeah,
is what it was called.
Killer Cuts.
So
That was a straight up block. Or was it Blockbuster around then? It might have been a Stop and Shop video rental multiple times. Killer Instinct. I never bought it.
That's what I was going to ask you. Was now that we've kind of gone through the game, some of the development, the scores, the mechanics. I was going to ask you, what are your memories of the game? Are we really going to talk about Johnny Z?
It's the portion where we go, who has Trenton played that game with? Is it A, Jesse Clark, B, Justin Donato, C, Johnny Zabore, or the wild card D, Nick Desatel?
Somebody Italian. Somebody with Italian blood.
Somebody's house we drove by earlier today, which is all of them.
Justin Donato.
No, it would be the one and only Jesse Clark.
Damn it! I got to just start guessing him from now on.
Yeah, well, yeah. Most of it, if it's earlier
Freaking
Super
Jesse
Nintendo
Clark.
and Nintendo.
If it's later 64, I'm gonna guess Tim.
Yeah,
Tim
64.
Donahue.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, Jesse lived like 4 houses down the road, so. And I think we played. I remember. I think it was during the, soccer when we had the Columbus Day tournaments or whatever.
Oh.
And
were your Franklin shin guards?
Yeah, my miter shorts. 76 orange slices.
Yeah. Oh yeah, baby.
Those were the days. And I can't say if it was during that soccer tournament, but I remember we had rented it the night before, and I stayed.
How old were you? Tell everybody how old you were in 1995.
Well, we do have to be like 10 or 11 at that time.
You would have been 11.
Yeah. And we had.
What a perfect time to play Killer Instinct.
Yeah, we had rented it either the night before, and I stayed at his house. We probably played it till like 2 a.m. or something like that, and then
At 11 years old.
oh yeah, because we'd be playing in the basement.
Wow.
Yeah, we just play forever, and then we'd get up. I remember we had soccer games that day, and we got back right down to the basement, play more Killer Instinct. And it was just.
Well, why would you do anything else? I mean, right? I can't question that.
And I don't think we had a.
Did you suck at soccer? You look like you suck at soccer.
You look like.
No offense.
I don't remember.
You got a body like a log.
Oh, you're like a solid log though, not a soggy one.
That's even worse.
A hard log.
You can't even move. Would you play? You better probably put you in defense, huh?
Oh yeah, of course. I'm not scoring any goals.
No. you got 2 left feet. If you get the ball, just kick it as hard as you can up the field.
Yeah. One objective.
Let's go, Trent. That's Carol, Trenton's mom, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, how's Carol doing?
Great.
Yeah. Good. I'm so glad. I love Carol Wright. She's wonderful.
She's the best.
She's the best. So she made you play soccer. I'm sure you
No.
didn't want to play soccer, right?
No, I think everybody played soccer back
Yeah.
then.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
At some point, it was just like, meh, not doing this anymore.
Yeah, after 11, because then you get 12 and it's like middle school, and then it becomes a little bit more serious.
Yeah.
You know.
Because then it's like you want to play baseball and basketball because you actually watch baseball and basketball.
Right.
No one's watching soccer at 10 or 11.
I could see you playing both of those sports, actually.
Yeah, I did. I think it was like all 3 at one point.
Yeah, that would make sense because
Yeah.
soccer would have been in the fall,
Yeah.
and then basketball winter, and baseball in the spring.
Yeah, but I don't think back to Killer Instinct anyway. I don't think we had a strategy guide for it either. And it was just trying to pull off so I don't think we had a strategy guide, and for some some miracle you would get like an ultra combo, and it was just like
that's the part that sucks.
This is like the greatest thing because there's no way to figure out how to do it. I mean, none of the games told you the moves.
I was getting confused just watching like the gameplay footage of Killer Instinct. I'm saying to myself, how are they pulling off these ridiculous massive combos?
I know, because back then it was like a secret to figure out. Even like in like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, it was like, unless I don't know how you knew, unless they were published somewhere. It wasn't like now in the games you just pause the game, it tells you the moves.
Well, you'd have to buy a strategy guide.
Yeah, it tells you the moves, the fatalities now, the combos, literally everything. And back then, you had to get the Brady Games $15 strategy guide just to get all the moves.
Why can't they just have one button fatalities?
That's no fun, though.
All right.
That's all
right. Four button fatalities. Why does it always got to be hold block down A B X B A down?
That's
up,
like a
down. Like what the hell is that?
That's like a participation trophy. You got to earn that shit.
But these fatalities are ridiculous. It's hard enough to even beat somebody.
But that's what made it better. When you finally figured it out, you're like, holy shit! Dude, fucking fatality!
Look at his spine!
Right? If you just press a button, you'd just be like, well, alright. I mean, that's cool, but like, when you remember playing or any of those kind of games in Mortal Kombat when you finally get you have to be in literally the exact right spot and then press the button combination to get it. You're like,
stand 3 lengths away from the character, hold block.
Yeah, jump backwards 3 times. I mean, but then when you got it,
it's
you were like
1, 2, and I'm gone.
Yeah,
I'm done.
Like, fuck, he fell over. But that's what made it great, though, right?
I just remember when we had Mortal Kombat. I should save this story. I just remember when we would play Mortal Kombat. It would be is let's just beat up on the second player and then just try
until you get to fatality,
and then just try to do the fatality. And you would just literally sit around with either your friends or in my case my brothers and then just see how many you could pull off.
Yeah, everybody did that.
But in real competition, you're not pulling off that stuff. You know what I mean? You're not remembering what the fatality is.
No.
You keep in the guide there.
There's too much pressure.
Yeah.
Like, fuck, I lost the page. Fuck, he fell over. I remember that shit. We had like printed out the moves or whatever. Like, fuck, because you couldn't pause it either. No, you were fucked. You had 2.5 seconds. And you're like, fuck, that's Scorpions. I'm fucking Sub-Zero. That shit was so frustrating. So pissed off.
I apologize, guys, if you're in the car and listening to this with kids. I think we've met our quota and more for F-bombs. So, sincerely apologize. We'll try to tie this up.
That's how it goes, though.
Yeah, sometimes. Whatever you can do. But I agree with you. It was intense trying to get those fatalities.
That's what made it worth it.
So if we're done with Killer Instinct, or at least for now, let's switch gears to kind of some of the best of the rest in a way.
It's definitely a forgotten game.
Yeah, we're talking about Eternal Champions. So I would say Eternal Champions, when you think of the Pantheon, it's even lower than Killer Instinct.
Oh, of course it's lower.
And that's not a diss on the game. I'm just saying when you think about the best fighting games or the most prominent fighting games during the 16-bit era, people mention Killer Instinct. It's not a game that people forget about necessarily. It's not Street Fighter 2 and it's not Mortal Kombat, but it's kind of right under there.
It's memorable though. It had its own personality.
It really did. And in a lot of ways I think Eternal Champions did too. That's the other game that we're talking about.
Yeah, it just it didn't have the it.
Here's the thing. We haven't even mentioned all the Neo Geo games. Samurai Showdown.
Well, I mean, what are we talking about here?
Samurai Showdown is awesome. I still don't have a copy for Genesis. Do you have a copy of that?
I do. For Genesis, yeah.
Oh, God, I want a copy. Maybe when we go to the show.
No, you got to get the Sega CD version so you can start that one going.
I can't do that.
You say that.
Trenton is referring to
referring
me getting close to completing the Saturn set. I think we're about 35 away.
The big 3-5.
About 35 away. So if you're looking to donate Sega Saturn games,
He probably already has them.
we're getting close. There's some.
Unless you have World Series baseball, he'll take all those.
Oh my God.
The more, the better, just in case
I
the other one burns out.
Yeah, I can't believe I've gone this long in the podcast and not mentioned World Series Baseball '98. I can't believe I've done that. I got Cecil Fielder back on the horse.
All right, we're getting sidetracked
last night.
here.
2 home runs, one grand salami. Yanks beat the Mariners.
We'll put up your standings on the next podcast.
I think I'm 26-2. I lost 2 games. I was sliding, but we righted the ship. We righted the ship. Doc Gooden's the player of the month.
Not Dwight.
Huh?
Dwight Gooden.
Dwight Gooden? Yeah, Doc Gooden.
Yeah.
Eternal Champions was developed by the Sega Institute, which is a studio that Sega bought during the Genesis run, and they did a lot of ports. So they did a lot of IBM compatible PC ports. So they did Power Drift. If you remember that one of the Super Scalar games that Yu Suzuki made, it was a kart racing game.
Oh, okay.
Power Drift. They did Super Hang-On. And by the way, I don't know how any of these games performed on the IBM compatible PCs back in the late 80s. I imagine not
PC?
Not great. But I can't say for sure. They did Akari Warriors on
right.
IBM compatible
Well,
PCs.
I mean,
They did Cabal.
that's nothing fancy. Kari Warriors.
You remember Cabal?
Wait, Cabal.
Like Dynamite Duke.
Oh, really?
Yep. Where you have like the character, but then there's or Nam 75.
Oh, okay.
Where you've got a character in the foreground and you're shooting characters in the background.
Yeah. Yup.
Trying to avoid them. And then they did the Apple II versions of RoboCop and Commando.
Freeze, dirtbag.
And they also did the absolutely atrocious Tailspin on the TurboGrafx. One of those TurboGrafx
Damn, they
games
made a Tailspin on the TurboGrafx?
They did. They did the port for Tailspin on Genesis 2, but that game fared a little bit better.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So there's some really interesting things about Eternal Champions as I was digging into this. So Eternal Champions came out on the Sega Genesis. It was a Sega of America initiative to produce this game. And they produced it on December 11th, 1993. So it's one of those after Black Friday sort of releases. And this is kind of before Black Friday really was a big
Before
thing.
it really popped off.
But December 11th, 1993, Mortal Kombat came out on September 13th, 1993 on the Genesis. Street Fighter II Special Championship Edition came out September 27th, 1993.
Nobody won Eternal Champions after that.
So you gotta think about this when you have those heavy hitters coming out 2 months or 3 months prior.
Yeah, what's
and
the
Eternal
point?
Champions comes out on December 11th.
Hey guys, play me.
You know that really puts the game at a disadvantage in trying to get seen. But you'd be surprised how many copies do you think of Eternal Champions were sold?
If you're asking me like that, then it has to be a decent amount. I mean, it feels like it's like an underground hit. I would say over 1 million.
It sold over 2 million copies.
God damn, still? And it's like a forgotten game. It still
The
sold
thing
that
that
much.
you guys have to understand about the 90s is that fighting games were a huge deal.
Even the shitty ones.
Fighting games were huge. At one point, I read a story in Japan
Just think of
that 80% of the games produced in Japan were fighting games.
if you want to compare it, if you weren't around back then, just think of like all the GTA clones. That was
about 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, what I'm saying.
Saints
like,
Row.
Yeah. That would be like the fighting games. Or if you want to go real modern, Fortnite. Just think of like the craze of like Fortnite. That would be like
PUBG, Overwatch, like those games.
That would be like the fighting game craze.
Right. Think of a genre taking over.
If you need something to compare it to, if you weren't around, because you can't like understand like how ridiculous fighting games were back then, it'd be like Fortnite today.
Yeah. And but it still sold 2 million copies, so there was enough interest in it.
And nobody talks about Eternal Champions.
No, not really.
Like nobody.
No, no. But And it's funny that it's still sold. Not it's funny, but it's interesting that it's still sold over 2 million. Considering the fact that Genesis players were clamoring for Street Fighter 2.
Yeah.
Clamoring. I mean, they were dying for it, knowing that. The funny thing about Street Fighter 2 is that it was produced on an arcade system that had almost the exact same setup as the Genesis. The CPS platform that Capcom used a 68,000 Motorola main processor.
You mean you throw all these big words? I don't understand.
And a Zilog Z80 or Z80.
They put a xylophone in that shit?
Processor as well. And in the Genesis, you've got the 68,000 Motorola, and you've got the Z80, which the Z80 is what ran the Master System games and was the sound controller for the Genesis. So much of that arcade system was the Genesis, but yet, because of the loyalty that Capcom had, and because the Genesis had not popped off yet the way that we would have seen when it happened, Super Nintendo got Street Fighter 2 when it first came out. So Genesis players were dying for it. I feel like this is turning into a Street Fighter 2 episode.
Well, we're talking about fighting games. I mean, you got to compare it to those.
Yeah, so people were clamoring for it. And it came out before. It's not like Eternal Champions came out 3 months before Street Fighter, and people were like, "Well, let's buy this because we need something to play and we want a game like that." So it goes to show that Eternal Champions had some merit to be able to sell that many copies.
I don't think I knew anyone that had it.
Yeah. The other interesting thing about this time, and we're talking late 1993, December 7th, 1993, was the first ever blank. Trent, what do you think? I like playing this trivia game with you.
The first ever blank?
Something happened up in Washington on December 7th, 1993.
In Washington? Was this like the ESRB rating thing?
It was the very first hearing on video game violence.
Oh, yeah.
Which was headed by our wonderful state representative here in Connecticut, Joseph Lieberman.
Joseph the Man Lieberman.
And it led the charge for the rating system enactment, which basically told the video game companies that they had to start self-regulating and putting ratings on the games.
Regulators.
So I thought that was an interesting fact that you had this hearing and then 4 days later Eternal Champions comes out. And Eternal Champions has quite a few very interesting
you could say that.
ending scenes, let's call them.
Yeah, you want to talk about precise.
If you don't want to call them fatalities.
Yeah.
So Sega Interactive, again, I mentioned that they were the publisher. They started in 1984 as a company called Interactive Designs. And on Genesis, they produced games like Green Dog, which everybody loved.
I have that.
Of course you do, because it sucks. They did Dinosaurs for Hire, which I think is a very good game.
Yeah, that's one of the games I bought at Retro World Expo last
I don't
year.
want people shitting on Dinosaurs for Hire.
Have you played it?
You point a gun, you shoot at stuff, you're a dinosaur. Yes, I have.
Yeah, it's like it's Contra, but with dinosaurs.
The only problem with Dinosaurs for Hire is that it's zoomed in a little bit.
Yeah.
And you can't always see what's in front of you.
Yeah, it's like Contra Hardcore.
But
with dinosaurs. With a dinosaur with a machine gun.
But point a gun and shoot something and sign me up, baby. They did Bonkers on Genesis.
Yikes.
They did Garfield Caught in the Act, which is a late release.
Fuck. They did Eek the Cat for the PC.
No, but
they did Bobby's World for the Game Boy Color.
Is that real?
I don't know.
Bobby's World? The show?
Let's find. I hope so. Go ahead.
A Bobby's World video?
Yeah, why not?
They actually did Star Wars Arcade, the
like the 32-bit one?
The port to the 32X.
The 32X.
Which is very good. I mean, it's a little hard, but it's very hard, but it's a very good game. The lead designer, so we talked about Killer Instinct, and we talked about Kevin Bayliss being sort of a primary figure, along with Ken Lobb and a lot of the other rare heads over there. But Michael Latham is the gentleman who was the chief designer on Eternal Champions. He had originally developed a game called Tongue of the Fat Man, which came over to the Genesis as Slaughter Sport,
Oh, do I have that?
with the big fat guy who speaks out of his stomach.
Is that fighting game?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I do have it.
It's god awful.
Yeah, I think it's one
it's
of those
terrible.
like dollar games I got.
And it was a fighting game on the PC, a two-dimensional one-on-one fighting game from 1989. So this preceded even Street Fighter 2.
Right.
They were still figuring it out at that point. But he ported Slaughter Sport was ported to the Genesis because of the work that he did on Tongue of the Fat Man. Believe it or not, Sega liked it enough that they hired him to be, they brought him in to Sega Interactive.
They saw his potential.
And he stated in an interview with Sega16.com that was the case, that his work on Tongue of the Fat Man was the reason why he was able to go to Sega and the reason why he was able to produce a game called, this game called Eternal Champions. It was Activator compatible.
I was going to bring that up too. I remember that's like the only thing I remember from Eternal Champions was the Activator commercial.
So if you guys don't know what the Activator is,
this is called the Sega Activator, and this one happens to be with the greatest heavyweights of all time. It's $150, and what it truly enables you to get involved in your video games with your entire body. It's not just hand-eye coordination anymore, Gare.
This is two of the greatest heavyweights, Evander Holyfield and Rocky Marciano.
Yeah, I'm Marciano, you're
You operate
Holyfield.
your feet, depending upon where you put your arms. It will be a body shot, a hook, or just a straight jab or whatever. So here we go.
Now watch. Okay, here we go. See, I'm moving forward because I've got my foot over here.
Whoops.
And then you just
There we
punch.
go. Ooh,
See?
look at that. Huh?
Now punch me, Gare. There.
Huh?
Can you
Well,
see
I'm
that?
trying to.
I've got him. I've got him up against the ropes.
It's all right.
Look at
Evander.
this.
it is a
like octagonal sensor
that you put on the floor and plug into the Genesis.
if you want to get in the game.
And supposedly your movements by kicking and punching translates to the television through the game. So think of the Power Glove and what the Power Glove was supposed to do, almost in a way of that, using motion. This was the first motion controller in a way.
You want to call it?
But the interesting thing about the Activator with Eternal Champions was if you used this device, you got an advantage. Your punches and kicks would do 50% more damage with the Activator.
That's made me want to buy it.
And you would get 50% less damage by using it if you ever got hit. So they gave you a huge advantage, which is kind of ridiculous when you think about it.
They were like, we need people to buy this.
We need people to buy this, so we're giving people an incentive, but it would totally break competition.
I think it's probably like $80 when it came out. You stack the Activator
How
with
much-
the interactor, the
my-
Aura interactor, and then it's a real party.
Can you look up an Activator? I want to know what an Activator goes for right now. There was a very large financial promotion for this game. Sega of America, this was like their...
I mean, yeah, it was going to be their...
In doing this research, it really seemed like Sega of America they had something to prove. They had a chip on their shoulder.
Oh, it was like, we can make fighting games.
And they wanted to prove... I mean, when you make Green Dog... and some of these other shitty...
Hang Ten, bro.
The Ooze...
The Ooze is actually a good game.
I don't know how to play the Ooze.
Oh.
Maybe you'll have to show me someday. But
That's a you problem then.
Sega of America was always like the little brother that couldn't when it came to game design. Sega of Japan was the one producing Shinobi 3 and Sonic the Hedgehog and all of the major, huge Genesis titles that were Sega produced were coming out of Japan. So you had Chakan the Forever Man coming out of Sega of America.
It's a hot title, though.
I don't like Chakan the Forever Man.
No?
No, I don't.
Chakan? Chakan?
Chakan,
Chester Cheetah?
Check. I just think it's a really hard game. The progression is like, what am I doing in this game? And I thought that you can't actually beat the game. Like, there's no way to actually beat Chakan.
I don't know. I've only played it a few times.
I don't think that there is, but I've even looked up gameplay footage, and you almost get stuck in this loop at the end of the game.
So the Activator, there's only been 2 that have sold in the past 90 days.
Of course, why would there be?
One was $75, and the other price.
So it's going for retail then.
So and yeah, I figured it was like $80 when it came out. And then the other one it's allegedly it was a best offer, so you don't know what the actual price was.
Why don't they tell us that?
Yeah, it's deceiving because it'll say like
It'll just cross it out.
No. It'll say if you look under sold listings for something, if someone had it for 90 or best offer, then it just says it sold for 90 or best offer. It doesn't tell you what it actually sold for. So people see that and they probably just assume it sold for $90, and that's what gets prices misconstrued.
You know, I've been saying that we need an alternative to eBay. I don't mean to make a
here we go
diversion, but I'm gonna. You look at a lot of these games, and I'm doing this every day because I'm trying to gather quite a few games, and so many games are getting propped up by this buy it now or best offer, where people are paying way more than they should be. The discrepancy between auction prices and buy it now prices is sometimes double.
It's the market, baby. That's how it works.
eBay is doing this because they want to get higher profits. They get 9% out of every sale.
Well,
why would they want to encourage? Why would they want to encourage? It absolutely is eBay. Why would they want to encourage auctions?
I want to put on my conspiracy hat.
Why would they want? No, it's not a conspiracy. They're a business. They want to make money. Why would they want to encourage auctions when they're the only auction site that anybody cares about when it comes to video games? They don't want auctions. They want the Amazon model. They want people to pay as much as possible for every item, so that they can make the most money that they can. We need an alternative to eBay that only does auctions. But
I guess
I don't know what the answer is because people are still going to flock.
But then if you get something, you're going to put it up and buy it now too, and you want to get the most money for something, right?
No, you're right. I can't sit here altruistically and say
because we're not just talking about video games, which is what we're kind of talking about. But you apply that to everything on eBay. Right. I sell stuff on eBay, and
no, I get it.
If it's what it goes for, then that's what I'm going to put it up for.
But it's artificial. It's artificially propped up because of that eBay model, and I just feel like if there was a second auction site, they would keep themselves in check. But there is no other alternative.
It's eBay's been around since like the beginning of the internet. There's like
I've been a member of eBay since 1998.
I mean, so have I.
So that's 21 years.
Yeah, I mean it's it. There's nothing. It's just too deep into the game for like some just other company to come in and
you jumping on Stadia?
Fuck Google.
Seriously.
Oh man.
See they're getting attacked now. Everybody's getting attacked. Whatever. So, anyways, Eternal Champions.
Microaggressions, micropenises.
So, Sega of America believed in this game so much that they had a large promotion with it. They did this promotion with 7-Eleven, where
you could
get the special 7-Eleven Eternal Champions Cup.
And those were all the rage back then. Talk about like things that white people needed back in the day.
Batman Returns, McDonald's Super Limited Edition plastic cups if you supersized it.
Yeah, I mean I got them all.
There was of course, cherry flavored Slurpee that accompanied the game. It was like an Eternal Champions cherry. I'm not joking, man. This is serious.
But it's just like it's cherry, so it's Eternal Champions. The cherry is eternal.
I'd buy it.
If you want to be a real champion,
artificial,
you drink eternal
artificial cherry is my favorite fruit. Electronics Gaming Monthly sponsored tournaments before the game was released.
Man, who could you picture at an Eternal Champions tournament back in?
You and me.
Man, I wish there was video of that.
Maybe there is somewhere. There were books, there were comics based off the game, and I really feel like this is Sega of America trying to prove something to Sega of Japan.
If they would have put out,
we can do this too.
If they would have put out action figures, that would have been
cool. That would have been cool. I want to play something for you guys and
oh, here we go.
Get your thoughts on what you think here. But I was listening to the Eternal Champions menu theme. And it eerily sounded, to me, like something else. So I'll play that for you. But this is the menu theme. It's sort of like the title screen in a way, but the title screen after the title screen of Eternal Champions. So I want you to listen to this, and then I'll play something else. But take a gander at this track from Eternal Champions. Getting a flavor of this?
Yeah, it makes me want to get into a fight. That is the most generic theme music I've ever heard.
Well,
sounds like some Paperboy shit. Except for that little piano in the background.
So, and then listen to this.
Oh, well, I mean, let's not even compare.
Do you see any similarities?
Do you see what I see?
Let's go back.
It literally sounds like the opening from it just reminds me of Paperboy. It sounds terrible.
It sounds to me like a shittier version of that Mortal Kombat theme.
It's just so far off I can't even compare.
What's crazy is that this is a Sega produced game, and the freaking Probe Entertainment game that comes out from Midway. I mean,
Midway.
It sounds awesome.
I mean, I know.
How awesome does that sound?
And that's why no one remembers Eternal Champions.
Eternal Champions sounds like a game from 1989 that came out on the Genesis using those fart noises.
I know. It sounds like something you'd hear at the beginning of Clax.
Anyways, I just wanted to... I felt like they were trying to mimic the Mortal Kombat.
The only part that's similar is that little,
Yeah.
But the rest of it just sounds like shit in a diaper.
It really does. It really sounds gross. But anyways, I thought they were trying to rip off Mortal Kombat there. It just sounded too close. The story of Eternal Champions is that there's a supreme being, the Eternal Champion, from the future, and he's watched the future go into ruin, and evil has taken over. And the only way that they can change the future is if he takes one of these heroes from the past, who's an inch before death, brings them all together into a tournament, and the one who wins gets to go back before they die to change what went wrong and save the universe.
I'm into it.
Killer Instinct was this Ultratech corporation wants to create bioorganic weapons. It's
a fighting game.
It's a fighting game.
Who gives a fuck about the story?
Yeah. This game, again, so many games were influenced by Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat. I think this one is no different. Each character, what's cool about this is that each character uses their own martial art. So some use Jeet Kune Do, some use Kung Fu. One of the guys uses Capoeira. So every one of the characters uses a different style. The caveman doesn't have a style, so his is called Pain.
Perfect.
It's literally just him with a club.
Beat you with a club.
He just beating you. It does use the 6-button Street Fighter 2 layout. However, the special moves are carried out through multiple button presses. So think like Soul Calibur, when there's grabs.
Oh, don't
you press 2 buttons at the same time or 3 buttons at the same time, which carries forward a special move.
Isn't it if you have the 3 button, you have to hit start?
It's the same as Street Fighter 2. You'd have to hit start and then you get access to the kicks, or you press start and you get access to. So Street Fighter 2, Eternal Champions were games that really kind of propelled that 6-button controller to prominence. And I would say even Mortal Kombat as well. But in Mortal Kombat, how would you do that? Because the start button is the block, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's
Do you not have a block?
I don't. I've always played it with a 6-button, but I think it's like Mortal Kombat 2. I think it was AB was
oh my god, that's terrible.
Was high punch and BC was. I could just be making that up, but that's what I think if you had a 3-button.
There's an interesting piece of this game, which there's on either side of the power bars, there is this yin yang that is something they call it inner strength, and there's ways to reduce the inner strength of each character. And if the inner strength, by either getting hit or by getting taunted at, goes down to nothing, you can't pull off any special moves. Only just the regular A, B, C, X, Y, Z buttons. Mm-hmm. So you have to be careful that your character is not going to get depleted, and then they can't. Their access to a whole moveset is just gone. So that's one aspect of it that's a little bit different. It does have finishing moves called overkills, and all this is if an enemy, you kill them and knock them into a certain area of the stage, an area of the background will basically start animating and will destroy them in a fatality that is different for every single stage. So there's one stage, I think it's Marcus's stage, who's the Wiccan Warlock, and if you knock your enemy right to the left or right, I think it's actually to the left, but it could be either side, of the fire, there's a fire in the middle of the stage, and if you knock them right into it, they actually they burst into flames.
Burn alive. I think that's like the most
that one
well-known. I think that's like the most well-known finishing
and then the corpse, the skeleton is just sitting there, and the head wobbles and then just falls to the ground, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
There's another stage where there's a neon sign in the background on the top of the building. Like, if you kick so
drive-by.
Oh, there could be.
You
mean the gangster? The gangster stage?
I forgot his name.
There's another one where there's the guy who's a Atlantean. He's like a creature man thing from Atlantis. And on his stage, if you kick a character into a certain area, sentient carnivorous plant that kind of comes up, grabs them, and just takes them back down.
Yep.
So that was, that's another cool thing that you can kind of do is almost like the Mortal Kombat fatalities, is look to, commit these overkills. One of them is fan blades. There's one character stage where you can kick him into the fan, and he gets cut up into the fan.
I remember that one.
So that's a little bit about the game. I have memories of this game. Do you have memories of this game?
Not the Sega Genesis one, but the Sega CD version, which I guess was the sequel. It was like the enhanced version.
I've played the Sega CD one recently. My memories tell me that Eternal Champions 1 is a better game.
How isn't it just like the same thing? Same
the
gameplay?
Similar gameplay, but the Sega CD version, they really tried to expound on it and make it bigger, and I don't know if that made it a little too big for its britches.
I remember. Guess who I was playing this one with?
Jesse Clark.
Yeah, of course. He was the only person I knew that had a Sega CD.
He had a Sega CD?
Yeah, he had the Model 1.
He's your Josh Narkowitz.
He had the Model 1.
The Model 1?
Yeah.
Damn.
The pop-out loader.
Hardcore.
Yeah.
Did his family have money?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean...
Only rich kids had a Sega CD
back
in the day.
We lived on Mansfield Ave. We weren't throwing money in the streets.
Come on, you ever read The Millionaire Next Door?
But yeah, we had only played the Sega CD version, and I literally remember none of the gameplay because all we tried to do was get the finishing moves. I just remember the one where you're in like a cave or whatever on like the minecart, and then you would get the thing, and the opponent would just kind of be standing there all groggy, and then they would just get impaled by a wooden stake. And then in this one, it had the I think they were called like the Cinekills, where it would go to like a full motion video.
Oh,
kill.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't checked those out.
And then obviously I think it had a lot more characters in the Sega CD version too.
Yeah.
But I've never played the Genesis one.
I get more of a general feel in this version on the Genesis that it's just more ominous. The stages, the sound is a little bit creepier. The whole game through and through has just got a creepy vibe to it.
Than what? Than the Sega CD one?
Than the Sega CD one. Just this first version of it was had its own character, and I think it was a little eerie. I don't know if it's just how they developed it and they didn't mean for it to be that way, but when I play Eternal Champions or when I watch footage of Eternal Champions, it just gives me this very, I don't know if it's the sound hardware and the sound software that they're using, but it just feels very eerie to me for some reason.
I mean, it still looks good.
Oh, I'm not saying it doesn't.
Graphically. No, I'm just
I'm
just commenting on it.
No, I think Eternal Champions is very much a contemporary with the other fighting games of the time, and holds its own definitely very well. Even in a lot of the sound, I think it holds its own. But that title card is just
that doesn't make you want that. You don't think of fighting when you hear that.
There's no bass in that. It's just like bam, 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 bam. It doesn't tell you what you're getting into.
Hitting a diaper with a drumstick.
Yeah. So I was about 10 years old when I experienced the game.
Oh, so you did play it?
I did play it a little bit.
Oh.
Yeah, I did play it a little bit. But it was another one of those things where I went to, in this case, I went to a friend of a friend's house.
Oh,
you ever do that?
The elusive friend of a friend.
You ever do that where you went to like a friend of a friend's house, so you were really out of your element?
Yeah.
It was like, well, we're going over to Pete's house, and you just showed up, so you're just going to come with me. And then it's a whole new world. I mean, a really whole new world that you've never even experienced, you get to the house, and it's like, wait a minute, the living room is here, and the kitchen is open? Like, that's not the way my house looks. Like, this is a whole new thing. Man, they got an actual sofa? Jeez, we just had a love seat. So I'm just going to say his name is Chris. Chris W.
Sure.
Yeah, Chris was a friend of Matt Phillips's.
Oh.
Yep.
The elusive.
Seriously elusive.
And the illustrious.
As in, he won't even call me back elusive. And it was a similar thing to what you were talking about. So we went to Chris's house. Chris was a massive, massive Star Wars fan. He had all the Kenner Star Wars figures. He had the TIE fighters that were like this big, like massive, just stacked up all over his room. Just stuff I had never seen before. And the whole time that we were there, it was just trying to accomplish all these overkills. That's all we were doing for the whole day, was trying to make sure that we could get all these overkills done. So it was less about the competition of it and more about the spectacle.
I mean, it just goes back to playing Mortal Kombat, and that was like the only reason you played 2-player back then, just to beat up player 2 and try to figure out how to do a fatality.
Yeah, which is great, because I think that's like when your friends come over, that's what you want to show.
Yeah.
Is the the brutality of it. But I'm really interested to see how this game plays, coming back from it from
probably like shit.
25 years. We'll get a flavor of it, and we'll come back and see how we feel about it. But I'm gonna give it a chance. I know it's been 25 years and we haven't played a game like this before. In a while, but
we're gonna come back and say like, just play Street Fighter.
You think that's what we're gonna say? I hope we're surprised.
If you're gonna play a fighting game, I'm sure it's gonna be like, oh, just play Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter.
Yeah. I hope we're surprised though. I hope that's not how we feel. I hope we say both of these games are great. Both of these games have merit, and you should be looking out for them. So
we shall
see. So stay tuned. We will be right back.
This portion of our show has been brought to you by
Double Dragon, twin brothers with a secret identity and legendary power. Billy and Jimmy Lee, united against the evil crime boss, Shadow Master. The twins race on their cycle to stop him.
Metro City will be mine.
Take the plunge, Shadow Master.
The power of the dragon. The secret of twin masters. Double Dragon. Figures and Double Dragon cycles sold separately.
Welcome back, guys. We have gone through our paces here. I feel like Chris Farley in Wayne's World.
I feel great, man. I feel great! I don't know, man. I hate my father. I hate my life. But I feel great, man.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah. So the first game we played was Eternal Champions, and I'll just say it right off the bat. I think Eternal Champions is a very competent game.
It's a tight play.
I think it's a lot of fun.
it moves fast too. Surprisingly, it's like because a fighting game, it has to be good right away. Otherwise, it's
going to be downhill quick.
Yeah, it's because
everything's really responsive. I don't agree with the guidance that the moves were, double button presses and things like that. I thought it controlled a lot like a Street Fighter game.
Yeah, because we were randomly pulling off some like projectile moves and
absolutely
some
pretty easily too. Just by trying out different things.
Some fast hitting combos. The sprites are huge. Like the characters are detailed.
Good size.
Yeah.
Yep. The only thing I would say is that there's so much dithering in the graphics that it's better to play it on a CRT. I know that's not always possible, but there is quite a bit of dithering.
It's got big pixels.
If there's like clouds going by, they're dithered. So it's just one of those things you have to deal with. But
it's really colorful.
It is. It's for the Genesis having such a limited color palette, I think it does pretty well.
Yeah, it's really bright.
I actually do like the fact too in the stages where there's a lot of things going on in the background.
Yeah,
you'll have cars going. There's one
similar
to
Street Fighter.
There's one scene in front of the cinema where there's like the cars going by.
Yeah,
and then you have like the rolling paper that's like going by. There's a popcorn container.
Yeah,
that's kind of animating while you're playing the game. So, I like that fact of it. I like that each character feels really unique. It doesn't feel like any one of the characters feels like sort of like a palette swap of another.
Like you have the girls like Jeddah, and then the other one they're
Shadow.
like super quick.
Yeah,
they can jump, do some crazy jumps.
But it's true, they do have their own fighting styles. It's almost like their own martial art.
Yeah, like if you go,
it's true to that.
Because if you go from them, and like I chose Slash. He's just slow moving, but he just like pounds the shit out of you. You couldn't even get like a hit off.
I couldn't get anywhere.
Yeah,
I think I had like this much health off of you, both fights. You just crushed me. So I think it's a game that has nuance. It's a game that you can learn and get really good at. And if you've played Street Fighter 2, you will like this game, and it'll give you something different to go to actually try to learn and get better at, while still giving you the opportunity to do these overkill moves and have that Mortal Kombat spectacle in a Street Fighter package.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get super into the moves and all that, but I'm guessing the overkills you have to...
They say it's just about being in a place at the right time.
But it's like random because it's not like a fatality where you drain their health and then you can set up the move. It's like they have to have like just a barely enough amount of life and be in the right spot, and you have to hit them. So
that's why you kind of want to do it as like
a final move.
Second player not doing anything.
Yeah, because it's like if you're going against the computer, they have to be like just a smidgen of life left and be in the exact right spot. It's not like you really can control like where they are, as in like a fatality is just it's after their health bar is depleted and then you can do the move. But I mean, besides that, it actually plays. I was expecting it to play slow. I don't know why, but I feel like most fighting games that aren't Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, they just play slow. Right. But it's like it's very satisfying, the hitting when you're punching someone.
The noises, like when you hit somebody,
the only thing
it really hits
the
hard.
only thing I think was missing in the game, the music is good. The sound effects are pretty good. The other thing is missing is there's no voice or like when you hit someone, they don't make like ooh. It's just like
right.
I mean, I think that would have gotten me into it a little bit more, I guess.
Right.
But I mean, other than that, it's actually a really good fighting game.
Yeah,
it moves fast. Like we went through like I don't know, maybe like I think we went through each of us went through all 8 characters and
pretty much each character
the matches are quick. The matches are really quick too. Yeah. Like I think we played through like everybody in like 15 minutes.
I really like the sound effects too when you pull off a special move, like when you're Xavier, the Warlock.
Yeah.
And it's like wow, like it makes that really twangy noise, but it's like impactful. You're like, oh my, I'm about to do something really sick, you know. Just everything about this game, it seemed like there was a pretty good amount of polish, and they really dedicated themselves to it and made it a very, very, very good fighting game.
Yes, some of the levels are definitely Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat inspired. Like there's one level that's like that looks like almost exactly like Vega's stage from Street Fighter.
Yeah.
And then that one there was like with the one outdoor level, it looks like the like arena level from like Mortal Kombat 1 or even Mortal Kombat 2.
Yep. Oh, they definitely took inspiration from those games. But I mean, what are you gonna do? I mean, that was the time.
I mean, if you're gonna go in order, I mean, it's like, you have Mortal Kombat, and on the Sega you have Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, and I mean, maybe Eternal Champions is the next one after that. I don't know. I haven't played like Samurai Showdown in a while, but
I think it depends on what you like. So if you like Virtua Fighter, I would say Virtua Fighter 2.
No,
I really like Virtua Fighter 2. Because I love Virtua Fighter.
Yeah.
I like the moveset. I like the way the game plays, and I think it translates really well to the 2D version. But the cool thing is that that's a game that I like that doesn't impede on my likeness for games like Street Fighter 2. I like Street Fighter 2 just as much. So Eternal Champions is really cool that it's almost like a new game that you can go back to and play that people don't talk about anymore.
Yeah.
I was surprised by how much I actually did like the game coming 25 years away. I think they knew they had something really good, and that's why they really backed it as much as they did with all the promotions. It's a very polished game. It uses the power of the Genesis wisely, the power of the sound hardware really wisely, and I just think it's a success story on the Genesis when it comes to 2D fighting games. Because what do you talk about in the Genesis besides Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter 2? Maybe Samurai Showdown?
I mean, that's only like the hardcore gamers are gonna play like Samurai Showdown or be familiar with it.
Yeah.
And like Fatal Fury.
I gotta be honest, I don't know much about those games.
Yeah.
Looks like there's a full manual though with all the movesets and everything.
Yeah, it's a solid. It even has the activator.
Oh, does it?
The sequences on how to do what? Yeah.
My guess is that makes it infinitely worse to play. But yeah, so I mean, and then moving to Killer Instinct.
But you know what's weird is that they
sorry.
never. It was kind of odd. You figure a game that sells like 2 million copies, and then it's like basically no sequel. I mean, there was on the Sega CD, but
nobody was playing the Sega CD.
They just
comparatively
they just like gave up on the game. I guess they was just like, well, we have Virtua Fighter, so let's just focus on that.
The interesting thing is that there was going to be a third sequel that was going to be for the Sega Saturn. On the early Sega Saturn boxes, there's a kind of like a filler in image of Eternal Champions for the 32-bit system, and Sega of Japan canceled it because they didn't want it interfering with Virtua Fighter.
Man, they didn't even put like a...
Which I don't know why they would do that, because you'd think a 2D fighting game and a 3D fighting game wouldn't compete with each other.
You
know?
And they never... they didn't put like any of these characters in like Fighters Megamix or anything, right?
No, none of it. It was all Fighting Vipers, Virtua
all
Fighter,
all the 3D ones,
and then cut Virtua Fighter characters, and then Sarah from Virtua Cop 2, and then a bear and the Daytona car.
The only other thing I think of was the terrible side scroller game on the Genesis. I think I
Green Dog.
No, no. I was gonna say that they brought one of the Eternal Champions characters in it, or the similar character was Experts.
Well, Experts is a spinoff.
Yeah.
Of Eternal Champions.
Yeah, and that was it. I think the girl looked like Shadow. I think from Eternal Champions. But it's terrible.
The more Asian looking girl.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I think it was, because it was a spinoff of Eternal Champions. That was a very late release.
No, I know.
Experts. Anything else you want to say about Eternal Champions right now?
I think we got it all.
Okay. So in terms of Killer Instinct, so this is the first time I've ever played Killer Instinct. I hate to say that. That's kind of sad. But talk about oomph of a hit. Killer Instinct, when you hit a character, it almost sets off this chain reaction. If you can get a hit and then you can get a second hit.
Yeah, it's like an animation where it keeps going.
You can get like 3, 4, 5 in, and it just kind of compounds on itself.
It's hard to get away from like the combo.
Well, you can almost create your own combo by successively hitting a person, like.
Yeah, it's like spamming almost.
In a way.
Yeah.
But you can't get carried away with it. Like you can't do that for too long, unless you're like doing a finishing move or something like that. But I mean, I don't know. Let's start with you, I guess. What is your thought coming away from it now, knowing now, like after you've played it from how many years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I think it still holds up. but it's because like I feel like if we were playing Eternal Champions and that moves a lot faster than the Killer Instinct did.
It feels like it's like you're running in water a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. It definitely moves a little bit slower. You can like see they definitely like, if you're thinking about the arcade version, they cut back a lot on like the frames of animation. It's definitely kind of it like the way the characters like kind of move.
You think it's like a little bit of a lazy port? Or they were just working with what they had?
I mean, if you it's on a 16-bit system. I mean, it still looks great. It plays good. It's just when you're going from like a fast-paced game like Eternal Champions, and then it's more like, I guess,
so
Eternal
it's a perfect
Champions
comparison of the Genesis to the Super Nintendo. When you talk about most Genesis games that
running faster,
that move a lot faster, and then you go to the Super Nintendo and it's more methodical, more polished, more.
But if you're not comparing it to another game, I mean, it's still a great game to play. That's about it.
Yeah, I was delighted actually as to how I felt while I was playing the game. I thought the oomph, you talk about like a Genesis game where you're getting that pow.
Oh,
I really felt that with Killer Instinct. I thought it felt a little cheap when you compare it to the arcade game, but I can't knock that too much because of what they were working with. Because they tried to fit the package in, but it does feel a little. Yeah. It does feel a little cheap in certain areas, and I can't put my finger on it, but I don't know if it's the transitions or it's just like the screens of the characters when they go up to fight. You know, it's just like Fighter! It's just like the portrait, you know, and because you know what the arcade looked like, it just looks a little hokey, but I can't knock it too much. I really love the announcer. He doesn't have as much bass behind his voice as the arcade version, but he's there, and you still get that that rush when he starts exclaiming whatever's happening at the time.
And then also, in Killer Instinct, you don't for your life bar, it doesn't, in like Mortal Kombat, it like resets after
you get 2 life bars.
Yeah,
that's it, and it's a rolling.
It's
match.
like it's like a continuous fight. Yeah,
that makes it a little bit different. I did feel like the hit detection was a little off, where you would swing and it would either hit or not hit, even if you weren't necessarily right on the character, but it depended on if it was a strong punch or a weak punch,
right,
determined how far the extension of the hit area was. But it didn't look like that on the screen, where you'd make an action and it didn't look like it was supposed to hit him, but it actually did. So that part of it I wasn't, I thought was a little off, but maybe that might be just something to do with the CG graphics and the animated characters.
Yeah,
it could be. I think it controls more like a Street Fighter game than it does a Mortal Kombat game.
Yeah, because I'm mainly if it's like an earlier Mortal Kombat game, I think it plays a little bit more like Mortal Kombat 3, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3.
Okay.
To me, it's a little.
You're more of the expert on Mortal Kombat.
It's more. I think it's similar to those ones than it is Mortal Kombat 1, especially because of like the combo
combos.
styles. Because the combo styles are kind of this. I mean, they're not 50-hit combos in Mortal Kombat,
That's
but
true.
they're the same. Like
That's
it's like
true.
a button press.
It might be maybe like right in between a Street Fighter and like a Mortal Kombat game.
Yeah.
In terms of the fighting style.
Yeah. But some of the character, I think some of them are a little unbalanced. Like with like
Jago feels like
you just can't get any hits on him.
That's how I felt overpowered with him.
He's just a master.
And then there's other characters where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Or like if I'm
TJ,
if I'm combo and you were a Riptor,
yeah,
like combos
his
like
hit areas like this.
Yeah, it's like he can only he just like swings his whole body with his punches.
Yeah, I kind of destroyed you in that first match.
That's as far he punches like a foot in front and then that's it, and I can't even get a hit.
Riptor's got like the tail,
yeah, and
like the lunge attack, so it does feel a little bit more unbalanced.
Yeah,
like I didn't feel that way with Eternal Champions. I felt each
like
character
they all played different.
Each character had its own style, but yet it felt fair.
Yeah, there were like advantages and disadvantages to each character.
So, but I do think that Killer Instinct, I don't know if it takes itself as seriously as a game like Eternal Champions. I think it's a little bit more silly, a little bit more fun,
Yeah,
a little bit more over the top.
Yeah, because it's
like an NBA Jam type of game. I mean,
it is an arcade port, you know.
Yeah, so I mean, is that a bad thing, or is that just because the game wants to be fun and playful?
Yeah.
In that way, you know, I mean, I think the arcade version they had to patch because there was a move you could do where you could just spam this one move with Glacier and it would be.
Well, I know with like Cinder,
and
you hit like forward punch, and he does like that like torpedo.
Yeah.
Like Raiden.
Yeah.
And if you just keep hitting that, it's like 3-hit combos. Like you just keep doing that.
Yeah. So I mean, I just don't think it takes itself as seriously. But in terms of, I guess, a fighting game, yeah, it might be considered a flaw a little bit in the game. But overall, I still had a blast playing it. I mean, if we're saying that it plays more like a Mortal Kombat game. This is the best Mortal Kombat game I've ever played. Like that I've had fun with.
Yeah.
You know, I have a hard time having fun.
Hard time
with Mortal Kombat. I just feel like it's way stilted, and I almost feel like I can never really do anything with the characters that's meaningful, and I get destroyed. But it could just be that I suck at it. I can't wrap my head around Mortal Kombat. This game I could wrap my head around a little bit more and have some fun with. But then you have characters like Jago, who's more like a Street Fighter character. He's like Ryu.
Yeah.
You know?
Big like a clone.
Doing short Shoryukens and stuff. So I think it's kind of like an amalgamation of a bunch of stuff. You knocked me off the stage, but like he plummets in that animation, but then you don't see what happens.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
He just falls and it just goes.
Yeah, they just kind of took out
screen
that.
Shakes.
Yeah. It looks like it looks like the Turtles in Time screen when they're all just like it's got that Mode 7 scaling. Yeah, it's like the same thing.
So, well, let's talk about a verdict in terms of whether we recommend them or not, because I think we like both games. Eternal Champions. I'll give my opinion in terms of whether you guys should buy it or not. First of all, you know, I would think you'd want to like fighting games. That would be the first thing. If you don't like fighting games, then
well, whatever.
I guess the discussion doesn't matter. But in terms of a retro style, one-on-one fighting game, Eternal Champions goes for about $10-11 complete.
Yeah, I think I got it for like $8 complete.
Which is, buy it now.
So you want people to use the buy it now offer?
No, I mean, oh shoot. I mean, like but you know, it's one of those games. Genesis has such a wide library. There's like 700 plus games. There's a lot of them that people kind of ignore. So, with that many games in the library, I think a lot of games get overlooked. This game is one I think not to be overlooked. So for $10 or so, if you like fighting games, this is one you can totally sink your teeth into, and you can get a complete game. I had a ton of fun with this game, and I'm just kicking myself that I didn't play it sooner. But that's what this podcast is all about: is kind of rediscovering these games.
I know. I was surprised. It like right when we started playing, I was like, oh. This is actually,
right.
It moves fast and everything felt like good. The hits, everything, the music's good. Sound effects are good. I just wish there kind of was a little bit more when you're actually hitting them. They made a little, like some kind of voice or yeah. But other than that, man,
I'm suddenly appreciating like the art even more. You know?
Even though, I mean, it sold 2 million.
It sold 2 million copies.
You know?
So there's plenty of them out there to pick up on. So I would say it's a no-brainer.
It's a solid get.
Absolutely. And moving over to Killer Instinct, so usually we talk about Super Nintendo with loose carts because the boxes are so hard to get.
Yeah.
So on a loose cart, you're going to spend about $12 for Killer Instinct, which for the late release that it is, for the prominent title that it is, that's pretty much as cheap as you get for when it comes to like a good Super Nintendo game. Are we calling it a good game?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I liked it. For $12, if you like fighting games, if you like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter 2, I think if you've played those games out and you want more, I think this is a good game to get. What say you?
Yeah, it's a solid game, man. There's not much wrong with it. There's just, I mean, if you're a fan of, if you like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, like I don't see how you could not like this game.
So I think these are both solid recommendations.
Yeah.
definitely yeses to both. Which Excite Bike? Did we say yeses to both?
No, not Excite Bike 64.
But where the rubber meets the road now.
Ooh.
Which game? Eternal Champions or Killer Instinct? Sort of contemporaries. This was a little bit earlier by about a year when you compare it to the arcade game. But Eternal Champions versus Killer Instinct. I don't know. I think it becomes tougher than we thought when we first started recording.
I know. I thought I would have said Killer Instinct, no problem. But I'm leaning a little bit towards Eternal Champions. I think right now, if we were done and we were like, oh, do you want to? Which one do you want to play again now?
I'd want to play Eternal Champions.
Yeah, then I would want to play Eternal Champions.
Yeah, which is crazy to think because of the pedigree that Killer Instinct has.
Yeah,
but that just goes to show too. I think for as much as Killer Instinct is great, and they did everything with the with the new engine and all that. I feel like Eternal Champions concentrated a little bit more on the character of the stages themselves. There's a lot more character in the game, not just the characters, but what's around those characters to kind of build it out a little bit. I feel like there's just more padding there, more going on. You see that the stages in Killer Instinct tend to be kind of barren. Or there's not a whole lot going on, or there's static backgrounds.
Well, yeah, like the one you're just on top of a building. There's just sky in the background.
Right, so
or you're in the boxing ring. It's just a boxing ring in the background.
Right. Now in the arcade version, there's way more animation and perspective.
We're not talking about the arcades, man.
But we're not talking about the arcade. It's just to give some perspective on it. But I appreciated that about Eternal Champions, that they didn't have the SGI workstation, so they had to do something different, and it's one of those games where they really concentrated on the art direction and putting so much into everything else in this game besides making a great fighting engine.
It's about a Sega of a looking game as Sega can make.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, and surprised given that it's a Sega of America game, because usually you don't equate Sega of America with quality. And I thought this was a quality effort. I've never played a fighting game where I thought that each character played more differently from one another.
Yeah,
but yet the game is still to me feels balanced.
Yeah, like if you,
and of course this is a short, snapshot.
Like if you were picturing, because around the time Mortal Kombat 2 was out, most of the characters you can't really tell that there was no discernible difference in each character, the way they
move,
how fast they were. They all kind of move the same. This one, literally each character feels completely different.
I kind of like that.
But like we said, it's not. There's not the one's not overbearing. On one of those, maybe Slash is a little bit too powerful, but he's also really slow.
But he's slow, so you can maybe take advantage.
So you
of
could
that.
jump around him if you're one of the faster characters like Jeddah. Or someone like that.
I wonder if this game has a larger following than we think does in the fighting game community. But nobody's going back to play a 16-bit game now because they want to play an updated version. And who's going back and updating Eternal Champion? That would be pretty cool if they did.
Yeah.
Made like a 2019 version,
like an HD remake.
Yeah. Yeah. If Sega would do that, but is this on the? I don't think this is on the Sega Genesis Mini.
Oh. No, I don't think it was listed. I don't remember seeing it.
It's not one of those deep cuts that people are clamoring for that goes for $150.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons to get the Mini, because it's got those really sought after titles, but
isn't Contra Hardcore on it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that's
Hard Corpse.
that's like a $80 game right there.
60, 80,
that's
something like that.
Price of the system almost.
Could be, yeah. I think maybe Bloodlines is 80.
Splatterhouse is on there. Isn't Splatterhouse on the Mini? Yeah,
was that one of them?
It was one of the two games they announced.
I know Tetris is on it, the one that you said didn't exist, and it does, but it was in very, very limited quantities.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they added Splatterhouse one of the, because they were going to be 40 games.
Two
and then
or
they
three?
Added 2 more. I don't know which one it is, but maybe either way, those are expensive games.
Have you seen those commercials, man? Those are awesome. Those Sega Genesis Mini commercials. Man, nothing fills you with nostalgia more than seeing a Genesis Does commercial.
Yeah.
Seeing a new Genesis Does
It
commercial.
would have been better if they would have brought like Buster Douglas and Joe Montana back for it.
They might as well bring back Spinal from Killer Instinct and put them up there and say it's Buster Douglas.
Oh man.
Oh man.
All right, we've reached the pinnacle of the pod.
I'm surprised by the result, but at the same time, I thought it was a ton of fun. So I would say either game. If you guys have only a Super Nintendo, definitely I think Killer Instinct for $12 is a go. I think Eternal Champions for $10 complete is absolutely a yes. And
it's so nice. The booklet is very thorough too. In Eternal Champions, it has each character, their story, has all their moves. It has the moves for the activator. If you for some reason own that,
no, don't do. You just look like a tool.
Full solid pickups.
I just want to take one quick look and see because you mentioned Splatterhouse. Let's see if that's on the list here. Space Harrier 2.
Oh, wow.
I don't see... It's got Street Fighter 2 Special Championship Edition.
No. Well, ain't that something?
I don't see Splatterhouse.
No?
No. Has Virtua Fighter 2.
Oh. Well, SOB.
And Road Rash 2. So I would say definitely a yes to these guys. So again, thank you for watching. If you guys have any suggestions on games you'd like to see us play, again, please reach out to us at our email. That is theturboduo@gmail.com. We're on Instagram at theturboduo. Facebook is theturboduo. And you can find us on pretty much all the podcast apps at this point. We're on Stitcher now.
We just got on Stitcher the other day, so by the time this comes out, probably another month.
Podbean, iTunes, and then you can always find us in the more robust version on YouTube. So if you guys have a chance to view it, you're typically getting a lot more from the video that we're putting up and the pictures that we're putting up that are relating back to the conversations that we're having. So I think that's the best way to consume it, but take your pick on whatever works for your schedule and your life. But again, thank you guys so much for listening and being a part of the show. As I always say, be safe, be happy, be healthy, and keep it turbo.
Dun, dun, dun. Skinnamarink-dinky-dink, skinnamarink-doo.